Welcome to section 2 of Data Network Security 1. In this session, we'll be talking about web application basics. Now, at the end of this session, I'll be talking to you about the common components of web application, and we'll think about some HTML and HTTP in their most basic forms, just like any hacker would do. So we are talking about the Hypertext markup language and the Hypertext Transfer Protocol. So what is a web application? Now, in our earlier session, I made mention that there's a thin line between a website and a web application. Now, a website provides only static documents. There are no user inputs that affect business functionality, so there's no need to put in any password anywhere once you enter or you log on to your browser. But in a web application, this is built on website. So a web application is built on a website. It means that we have these static documents, but a further addition is that the site now takes in user inputs, and this may affect the back-end business logic. So we are looking at the web server that typically interacts with other back-end servers. Now we'll be looking at what these back-end servers are. Now, so what are these web application components? We have the client tier, we have the middle tier, and we have the data tier. Now, I'll be taking you through these three components in our next slide. So with the client tier, there are various forms. We are talking about basically HTML, okay, and this is implemented in our web browsers. So we have the HTML, just plain text that has a textual representation of the graphical page, consists of tags, attributes, and values. Most injection attacks, okay, involve breaking out of our current context. So this is the HTML. Then we have the HTML on a different level, which includes scripting capabilities, where there's interaction with the website and we can perform any action that is related to the website. Okay. Then in the same client tier, we have same origin policy. Now here, a script loaded from one origin cannot get or set some properties of the document from a different origin. We'll be looking into details concerning this scripting. Then we have Web 2.0, then we have Ajax, all forming part of the client tier. Then we look at the middle tier. Now here there are two forms. We have the presentation, which is the web server. Then we have the application server. For the web server, we are looking at Apache. We are looking at Internet Information Service, which is IIS, and a whole lot. Now we have here also some dynamic content. Okay, that has to do with active server pages, ASP, Code Fusion. We have Java server pages. Then for the business logic, which is the application server, we have Java, we have Microsoft. Here also we have PHP, we have Code Fusion, and so many. Now, this business logic basically specify the business functionalities of an organization. So once you have that, you can put that into the application server. Then we have the last one, which is the data tier, and this is mostly referred to as the back end. So the back end normally controls user and application specific data. We are talking about the Microsoft SQL Server, we are talking about Oracle, we are looking at IBM DB2, and very common one, MySQL. Now, document referencing. Now, when you take any typical browser, once you want to go onto, even if you want to go to Google, you have to type what is called the URL, the Uniform Resource Locator. Now, we have in a slide an example of a URL which has to do with the watch fire. Now, looking at that URL, I have broken them down into several points. We have the HTTP, which is the protocol. Then we have the host name, which has to do with the address, www.watchfire.com. Then we have what is called the port number. Here we have 80 as the port number, and that's in reference to an application, a web application. Then we have from product to default.aspx as the document path. So all these make up what's called a URL, okay? And this is what is used. Once it's clicked on, it takes you to your application. Now you should note that in this URL, we need to do what is called URL encoding, so that data sent to a web application can be encoded in a special format, okay? And typically we use the percentage sign in this format. So percentage sign followed by a hexadecimal representation. Now we have HTML forms. A typical HTML form has HTML, then a backslash HTML. So we have forms in there. So that's a small example of how HTML forms look like in code. And once this is executed, we have the username and the password to the right with a click to log in button. And here we have what is called the get and the post syntax. We will later look into what that entails. Now we look at the Hypertext Transfer Protocol, and this is a communication protocol, and this is used to transfer information on our intranets and internet. Okay, we have various versions. The current version is 1.1, and we have the request for comment, also spanning from 1945 to 2616. And this describes the language used by browsers and web servers. Now, HTTP request methods. These are basic methods that goes with Hypertext Transfer Protocol. We have the get that retrieves a document. We have the head, which retrieves the header information. We have the post that sends data to the server. Then we have put, delete, and this stores an entity body at the URL. Okay, we have some options also. Is that you're making a request for information about the communication options available on the request, or you are doing some trace, right? Then we have the response. So we have the response methods and we have some response. So we have 1 SS, we have 2 SS to 5 SS, which has to do with server error. So we have client error, server error, redirection, and 2 SS means that we are successful in executing whatever code we are supposed to execute. Now we have some HTTP response codes also, and that is an example for you. So we have client state management. Now HTTP is stateless, means that no continuity from one request to the next request. Now, maintaining state is a responsibility of the web application. We have what is called the sessions, and we have session management. An example of session management are cookies. Okay. Now, a piece of data stored by the browser on behalf of the web server typically sets the browser, okay, or sets the server. We have ASP.NET, we have set cookies as an example. So that line of code, set cookies, ASP with the session ID, gives you how to manage your client or the state of the client. Now we later talked about the get and post query parameters, and that is a link that can give you more detail on that. Now some useful utilities. Okay, so we have the Fiddler, which is a web debugging proxy that logs all HTTP. Now we have HTTP and HTTPS. With the S is the secured Hypertext Transfer Protocol. And we have Feeder that logs all these debugging proxies, okay? And it allows you to inspect all your transfer protocols traffic, your set, breakpoints, and all that. You can check the website and you can download those versions and study them. Firefox also has a tempered data utility that you can make use of. So in this module, we've learned to describe some common components of a web application. We've looked at the three components: client tier, middle tier, and what? Data tier. So, and data tier, we are saying that has to do with the back end. The middle tier, we are talking about the web server and the application server. Then the client tier, we are looking at basic HTML and some scripting. We also looked at HTML and HTTP in their most basic forms. Talked about the GET versus the POST request. We looked at the HTTP request and response. Then we looked at client state management. And this brings us to the end of the second session. I'll see you in the third section.